nugget large enough to make a scarf pin out of. The American gentleman had secured it all and left us the sweepings. For 3 months this went on, till at last I had paid away all, or very nearly all, that was left of our little capital in wages and food for the Kaffirs and ourselves. When I tell you that Boer meal was sometimes as high as £4 a bag, you will understand that it did not take long to run through our banking accounts. At last the crisis came. One Saturday night I had paid the men as usual, and bought a moid of meal at 60 shillings for them to fill themselves with, and then I went with my boy Harry and sat on the edge of the great hole that we had dug in the hillside, and which we had in bitter mockery named Eldorado. There we sat in the moonlight with our feet over the edge of the claim, and were melancholy enough for anything. Presently I pulled out my purse and emptied its contents into my hand. There was a half sovereign, 2 florins, 9 pence in silver, no coppers, for copper practically does not circulate in South Africa, which is one of the things that make living so dear here. In all exactly 14 and 9 pence. "There, Harry, my boy," I said, "that is the sum total of our worldly wealth. That hole has swallowed all the rest." "By George!" said Master Harry. "I say, father, you and I shall have to let ourselves out to work with the Kaffirs and live on mealie pap," and he sniggered at his unpleasant little joke. But I was in no mood for joking, for it is not a merry thing to dig like anything for months and be completely ruined in the process, especially if you happen to dislike digging, and consequently I resented Harry's light-heartedness. "Be quiet, boy," I said, raising my hand as though to give him a cuff, with the result that the half sovereign slipped out of it and fell into the gulf below. "Oh, bother," said I, "it's gone." "There, Dad," said Harry, "that's what comes of letting your angry passions rise. Now we are down to 4 and 9." I made no answer to those words of wisdom, but scrambled down the steep sides of the claim, followed by Harry, to hunt for my little all. Well, we hunted and we hunted, but the moonlight is an uncertain thing to look for half sovereigns by, and there was some loose soil about, for the Kaffirs had knocked off working at this very spot a couple of hours before. I took a pick and raked away the clods of earth with it, in the hope of finding the coin, but all in vain. At last in sheer annoyance I struck the sharp end of the pickaxe down into the soil, which was of a very hard nature. To my astonishment it sunk in right up to the haft. "Why, Harry," I said, "this ground must have been disturbed." "I don't think so, father," he answered, "but we will soon see," and he began to shovel out the soil with his hands. "Oh," he said presently, "it's only some old stones; the pick has gone down between them, look," and he began to pull at one of the stones. "I say, Dad," he said presently, almost in a whisper, "it's precious heavy, feel it," and he rose and gave me a round brownish lump about the size of a very large apple, which he was holding in both his hands. I took it curiously and held it up to the light. It was very heavy. The moonlight fell upon its rough and filth-encrusted surface, and as I looked, curious little thrills of excitement began to pass through me, but I could not be sure. "Give me your knife, Harry," I said. He did so, and resting the brown stone on my knee I scratched at its surface. Great heavens, it was soft! Another second and the secret was out. We had found a great nugget of pure gold, 4 pounds of it or more. "It's gold, lad," I said, "it's gold, or I am a Dutchman." Harry, with his eyes starting out of his head, glared down at the gleaming yellow scratch that I had made upon the virgin metal, and then burst out into yell upon yell of exultation, which went ringing away across the silent claims like shrieks of somebody being murdered. "Be quiet," I said. "Do you want every thief in the fields after you?" Scarcely were the words out of my mouth when I heard a stealthy footstep approaching. I promptly put the big nugget down and sat on it, and uncommonly hard it was. As I did so I saw a lean dark face poked over the edge of the claim, and a pair of beady eyes searching us out. I knew the face. It belonged to a man of very bad character, known as Handspike Tom, who had, I understood, been so named at the diamond fields because he had murdered his mate with a handspike. He was now no doubt prowling about like a human hyena to see what he could steal. "Is that you, Hunter Quatermain?" he said. "Yes, it's I, Mr. Tom," I answered politely. "And what might all that there yelling be?" he asked. "I was walking along a taking of the evening air and a thinking on the stars, when I hears howl after howl." "Well, Mr. Tom," I answered, "that is not to be wondered at, seeing that like yourself there are nocturnal birds." "Howl after howl," he repeated sternly, taking no notice of my interpretation. And I stops and says, 'That's murder,' and I listens again and thinks, 'No, it ain't. That howls is the howls of exultation. Some one's been and got his fingers into a gummy yeller pot elsewhere and gone off his head in the sucking of them. Now, Hunter Quatermain, is I right? Is it nuggets? Oh Lord!' And he smacked his lips audibly. 'Great big yellow boys. Is it them that you have just been and tumbled across?' "'No,' I said boldly, 'it isn't.' The cruel gleam in his black eyes altogether overcoming my aversion to untruth, for I knew that if once he found out what it was that I was sitting on, and by the way I have heard of rolling in gold being spoken of as a pleasant process, but I certainly do not recommend anybody who values comfort to try sitting on it, I should run a very good chance of being handspiked before the night was over. "If you want to know what it was, Mr. Tom," I went on, with my politest air, although in agony from the nugget underneath, for I hold it is always best to be polite to a man who is so ready with a handspike. My boy and I have had a slight difference of opinion, and I was enforcing my view of the matter upon him, that's all. "Yes, Mr. Tom," put in Harry, beginning to weep, for Harry was a smart boy, and saw the difficulty we were in. "That was it. I hollowed because father beat me." "Well now, did yer, my dear boy, did yer? Well, all I can say is that a played out old claim is a wonderful queer sort of place to come to for to argufy at 10 o'clock of night, and what's more, my sweet youth, if ever I should have the argufying of yer," and he leered unpleasantly at Harry, "you won't holler in quite such a jolly sort of way. And now I'll be saying good night, for I don't like disturbing of a family party. No, I ain't that sort of man, I ain't. Good night to yer, Hunter Quatermain. Good night to yer, my argufied young one." And Mr. Tom turned away disappointed, and prowled off elsewhere like a human jackal to see what he could thieve or kill. "Thank goodness," I said as I slipped off the lump of gold. "Now then, do you get up, Harry, and see if that consummate villain has gone." Harry did so, and reported that he had vanished towards Pilgrim's Rest, and then we set to work, and very carefully, but trembling with excitement, with our hands hollowed out all the space of ground into which I had struck the pick. Yes, as I hoped, there was a regular nest of nuggets, 12 in all, running from the size of a hazelnut to that of a hen's egg, though of course the first one was much larger than that. How they all came there nobody can say. It was one of those extraordinary freaks, with stories of which, at any rate, all people acquainted with alluvial gold mining will be familiar. It turned out afterwards that the American who sold me the claim had in the same way made his pile, a much larger one than ours, by the way, out of a single pocket, and then worked for his 6 months without seeing colour, after which he gave it up. At any rate, there the nuggets were, to the value, as it turned out afterwards, of about £1250, so that after all I took out of that hole £450 more than I put into it. We got them all out and wrapped them up in a handkerchief, and then, fearing to carry home so much treasure, especially as we knew that Mr. Handspike Tom was on the prowl, made up our minds to pass the night where we were, a necessity which, disagreeable as it was wonderfully sweetened by the presence of that handkerchief full of virgin gold, the interest of my lost half-sovereign. Slowly the night wore away, for with the fear of Handspike Tom before my eyes I did not dare to go to sleep, and at last the dawn